So the very first thing you should know about kelp is that they are algae that grow quickly. They are not plants. Some people might look at you a little differently if you don't know that. Kelp are involved in a lot of things. They are used by young fish to make sure they can escape predators, to make sure they reach adulthood, and they are also used in industry to make sure that your ice cream sticks together on those hot summer days. However, kelp nowadays are being overrun by sea urchins at a rate of 9 meters a month. They are also being impacted by climate change, though the impact on kelp abundance is varied. Before we dive too deeply into kelp, however, we should talk about biodiversity. Biodiversity can be thought as human interactions, but for species. Species are much like humans. Cooperation between diverse groups of people is what allowed us to thrive to this day. And species are no different. Without the ability of different species to be able to interact with each other, their overall fitness and their ability to resist change is dramatically lowered. The meat and potatoes of this video is going to address kelp forests, how they're being lost, and what we can do to help them. This video is going to mainly focus on the kelp forest located near British Columbia, as that is where this group is located in. A little bit about me. My name is Eric and I am a second year environmental science student. My partner Morgan, he'll make his introduction when he gets to his part. The main reason why we're interested in kelp forests is, as we found out last semester, they are crucial in maintaining marine life and that they are decreasing at dangerous rates that are accelerating. We also found out that almost no one outside of academic circles are well aware of the decline in kelp forests, and that a lot of people don't know how crucial kelp forests are in everyday life, and we want to make this more publicly known.
Usually, when we think about forest, we picture trees, shrubs, plants, and maybe even animals. But just beneath the surface of the ocean, there's a different kind of forest, one that's maybe just as vital to life. These underwater forests I'm talking about are called kelp forests. They stretch along most of the west coast of North America and are found all over the world, especially right here in British Columbia. A common misconception is that kelp are plants, but they're actually a large brown algae that thrive in cold, shallow, nutrient-rich waters. Similarly to forests on land, kelp forests grow in dense clusters, creating rich and layered underwater ecosystems. These forests are really important and provide both food and shelter for tons of species, from tiny invertebrates to massive marine animals. The dense layers of kelp can help protect young animals from predators and rough currents, which can act like a sort of nursery almost. Species like sea otters, sea lions, seals, whales, and a variety of seabirds rely on kelp forests for survival. These forests only grow in shallow waters, usually no deeper than 50 to 130 feet. This is primarily because kelp needs sunlight for photosynthesis, which makes them especially vulnerable to change. Scientists are constantly monitoring kelp forests. Scientists like those at NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, return to the same kelp sites year after year, and they'll monitor their health and watch for shifts caused by both nature and human activity. Kelp forests aren't just seaweed, they're underwater ecosystems holding together an entire coastal food web. But what happens when they start to disappear? In some areas off the west coast, the Kelp Rescue Initiative has had cases reporting up to 95% of the kelp forest disappearing in the last 7 years. The loss of kelp forests in British Columbia isn't just a minor change. It's the disappearance of an entire biome, which supports many different organisms. One of the major threats to kelp forests is climate change. Since kelp thrives in water temperatures that vary from 5 to 20 degrees Celsius, climate change can be a major stressor for their survival. For example, during the 2014 to 2016 marine heat wave off the coast of BC, coastal waters warmed significantly. This large increase in temperature negatively affected many marine creatures, especially kelp. Another major threat to kelp forest is sea urchins. Sea urchins quickly consume kelp, and can erase up to 9 meters of forest per month. This rapid clearing can cause what is known as urchin barrens, which are low diversity areas where kelp can no longer grow. As we can see from this graph, significant changes in kelp forest extent were observed across BC, varying by subregion and region. Out of the 11 subregions, 6 showed more kelp losses than gains, with the highest loss being 74%, 2 showed more gains than losses, and 3 showed minimal change. Additionally, we can tell from this graph that kelp forests have higher biodiversity than urchin barrens, which means a decrease in kelp forests will result in a decrease in biodiversity. Now, let's talk about biodiversity. Biodiversity is all about how much life there is and how varied it is in a particular environment. Scientists look at biodiversity in a few ways. There is genetic diversity, which is the variety of genes within a species. There is species diversity, which is the number of different species living in an area. And then there's ecosystem diversity, which is the range of different habitats and ecological communities in a region. All of these interact in complex ways to form healthy, resilient ecosystems. Now, you may be wondering, how do kelp forests fit into all this? Kelp forests are extremely biodiverse and provide food, shelter, and breeding grounds for a wide range of species. Some of the creatures you may find in a kelp forest are starfish, rockfish, kelp crabs, and salmon. Some species may even use kelp to help them spawn. For example, herring stick their eggs to the blades of kelp where they're protected from rough water and hungry predators. These kelp forests slow down water movement, creating safe nursery spaces where young fish can grow. Kelp forests may benefit a wide range of species, but one species that benefits kelp forests is sea otters. Sea otters are what we call a keystone species. Their feeding habits impact the entire ecosystem. They love eating sea urchins, which left unchecked can completely wipe out kelp forests. By keeping urchin populations low, otters can allow kelp to grow and support plenty of different species. In the 1800s, otters were nearly hunted to extinction for their fur. But then, between 1972 and 1979, just 89 sea otters were reintroduced to the BC coast. With some legal protection, the sea otter population exploded to over 6,000. This resulted in kelp forests expanding 20 times in size. Marine biodiversity rose by 30%. Carbon storage was boosted. There were new fisheries and a thriving otter tourism industry. This is a perfect example of how restoring one key species can have massive effects on an ecosystem. It wasn't just about saving one animal, it's about restoring balance, resilience, and biodiversity across the board. Kelp forests are essential, and by understanding how biodiversity works and the role kelp forests play in promoting it, we can better appreciate why their loss has such serious consequences.
Now that we know how important kelp forests are, here are some ways we can help them. The first way we can help them is to cull the sea urchins, or in simple terms, to kill all the sea urchins. Currently, sea urchins are overtaking kelp forests and are creating a steady state that is hard to change. A steady state is the point where an environment or ecosystem reaches where, without dramatic outside pressures, the environment or the ecosystem will not change. These sea urchins take over where kelp forests will normally grow, and they create their own steady state of an urchin barren. But since we are the high and mighty human race, we could do a lot of things that can get rid of the steady state, one of which is to introduce these cute little things called sea otters. Sea urchins are a part of the sea otter's main diet, and by reintroducing sea otters, we can slowly start chipping away at the massive growth of sea urchins. The government of Canada has already tried this in the late 60s and 70s by reintroducing 89 sea otters into BC. In more modern time, institutions are finally starting to be aware of the loss of kelp forests. Certain institutions such as UVic are working alongside First Nations groups and Fisheries and Oceans Canada to help restore kelp. Looking on a more global scale, other projects are also being undertaken by certain governments and institutions to also help recover kelp in certain areas. There are also general solutions to helping kelp forests. These solutions are not directed at kelp forests, but definitely do impact them in major ways. One of the factors already mentioned in impacting kelp forests is climate change. Now, talking about solving climate change or even defining climate change is just a little bit beyond the scope of this video, and they will be left up to the experts to do with. But just know that climate change is not always negative for kelp forests, but they are usually negative for kelp forests. Another general solution is just to make more people and institutions aware of kelp forests and their decline and the importance of them. More awareness of problems is never a bad thing, and by making more people aware, it will be easier to put more pressure onto institutions and organizations to actually take actions to help kelp forests. Another way to help kelp forests grow is to introduce better fisheries regulations, to make sure that the species that help kelp forests grow are continuing to thrive, and to make sure things such as sea urchins are declining in population. Individuals could also help kelp forests grow by making sure that they don't throw their trash in the water, or that when they are swimming that they don't disturb kelp forests and allow them to grow naturally. If you need some ways to convince the everyday person to help in aiding kelp forests, you could tell them about how they can help reduce costs for things such as medicine or products, as kelp are used in many products such as medicine. Kelp forests are a major trap for CO2. This means that they can aid in reducing climate change. Kelp forests can also be used in recreational diving. Just make sure when you are diving down there that you don't disturb any of them, or some of those mermaid things from Harry Potter might come out and grab you. Just saying. If we want to take a more capitalistic view, we could talk about the money potential in kelp forests, and meaning that if there is more of kelp forests, there is more money to be made. There are also many other ways to help kelp forests. These are just some of the other ways, and I'll pass it back to my partner to conclude this video.
And this brings us to our conclusion. British Columbia's kelp forests are quickly shrinking. This isn't just a loss of beautiful underwater scenery you see online. It's also a disruption of entire marine ecosystems. When these kelp forests disappear, so do their homes, nurseries, and hunting grounds that countless species rely on. As these species vanish or decline, biodiversity drops, which means the ecosystem becomes weaker, less resilient, and more vulnerable to collapse. The causes for these declines are clear. It's out-of-control sea urchin populations, climate change, and human impacts are all putting immense pressure on these vital habitats. But don't worry, there's still hope. Restoration projects are underway. Important species, like sea otters, are making a comeback. University groups and indigenous communities are fighting to protect and revive kelp forests across the coast. Although these challenges may seem overwhelming, the work being done today shows that recovery is definitely possible. If we act now, we can protect kelp forests while protecting biodiversity, climate stability, and the health of our oceans for future generations. And you don't necessarily need to be a marine biologist to help. You can always learn more about kelp forests, raise awareness about the danger they're in, support restoration groups, and push for policies that protect coastal ecosystems. Every single thing you do, big or small, can be part of this solution, because saving kelp forests means saving the life they support.